Okay, so this is a video game review for Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun for the PC. This game was released in 1999 and was the first Command & Conquer game that I ever played, although I did play the early Red Alerts before that, so was well familiar with the game mechanics. Tiberian Sun is a fine game 10 years after its release, and at the time, it was a damn fine game. It's probably not surprising that it's a little weaker today, but that's probably that's the story with most games, really. The important thing, though, is that playing through the two campaigns again, I didn't re-evaluate my original position. I'm still fond of this game, albeit a little less the second time around. Now I could spend 10 minutes talking about the story and its various intrigues, but I'm going to simplify it for you and just say that it's Nod versus GDI, back to the old. They're fighting over something called the Tacitus. There's chemical warheads involved and two very different visions for planet Earth. It's all very apocalyptic, as you would expect. The story's not epic like Warcraft 3, my shining example of computer game storytelling, but it certainly does the job, which is all that anyone can really ask for, and is more than can be said for other RTSs. I'm still as fond of the acted cutscenes as I ever was, something that Westwood should be commended on for keeping up. They're cheesy, but without them they just wouldn't be either Command & Conquer or Red Alert games, and they would easily drop a point given that they help separate the somewhat repetitive feeling missions, and they just give a bit of exposition as well to what's going on, and I think it's a sign of respect to the viewer as well. You pay for a game, you kind of want some kind of storyline along with it, and games that don't bother with that, it's kind of like saying here's a program we've put together, you do whatever you want with it, whereas here they're actually giving you a story, they're giving you missions that everything is interwoven, basically, is what I'm saying. So just like original cutscenes, like I said in my Shogun review, it's kind of like, I feel like it's respectful of the player, really, to try and give some kind of gaming experience, really, rather than just here's our game, just play it if you want to, sort of thing. Now, as I said before, they're cheesy as anything, and some of the lines you hear are just great, especially from McNeil, who is the main GDI's character. What a name, McNeil! It's such a Batman name. So let's hear some of his lines, just because I find them so funny, and cliched as well.
Chandra, you son of a bitch!
And what about this one?
Let's kick some ass.
Yep. I mean, what a classic character. Anyway, now for those of you who've never played a Command & Conquer game, what you basically do is you build a base. So, begin with, you build a construction yard for constructing buildings, a refinery for collecting Tiberium, which is the monetary resource of the game, a barracks for training infantry units, and a war factory for training and building vehicles, and some defensive structures to keep out enemy troops. Finally, once you've got enough troops, you throw them at your enemy. It's the archetypal real-time strategy, but what's good about Tiberian Sun is that the unit types do matter, and with each mission, more units and structures open up to you, changing the nature of strategy. No unit is invulnerable or too powerful. I'm going to give you 3 hopefully quick examples of that. Artillery may wreak havoc on enemy bases from afar, but just send in a few jump jet infantry at them, and Bob's your uncle, no more of a problem. Another example, the Mammoth MK2. I mean, it's a formidable enemy in the game, but surround it with rocket infantry, and even this beast of a machine can fall. Or, as in the case of the subterranean APCs or Devil's Tongues on the Nod side, which used to cause me an absolute problem, if you concrete up your base pretty well, then that usually stops them coming through the floorboards. So, what's good about Tiberian Sun is that no unit feels tacked on. More than any other strategy game I think I know, they all really fulfill a purpose and allow you to play the mission slightly differently. Also, there's no naval units, unlike in the Red Alert series. So there's less to take in for beginners, but also you don't really find yourself missing them all that much, which is another good thing. Furthermore, unlike some RTSs, infantry are just as important as vehicles in this game, which is definitely not the case in a lot of other games, where they just put infantry in for the sake of it. Here, infantry can be really, really important, especially later on with Bionic Commandos for Nod and Ghost Stalker units for the GDI. While none of the missions wow you, Westwood do try and add some variation, like having small squad missions of super troops, infiltration missions, time defense missions, abductions, etc. And now it's not particularly diverse, but it's just enough variation to keep it being really, really stale. Now, it just does what CNC fans want and expect, really. It's more of the same, with a slightly tweaked graphics engine, a few new units, and some cutscenes to tie it all together. And that's what you really want from a game like this, and you kind of know what to expect as well if you've played any of their previous ones. Thankfully, the objectives are straightforward for the most part, although there were a couple of occasions in missions where I'd completed the mission objectives, perhaps not in the way they had envisaged, and the ending trigger hadn't been switched. But these were only a couple of occasions and are, forgivable. I just restarted them and I tried to do them in the way they wanted me to. The game difficulty is also not too difficult, which is a nice change from a lot of other games. So on normal mode, I was surprised to find Nod's final mission allowed you 3 hours to complete it in. I'd say about half of that would have been more of a realistic challenge, but again, it didn't ruin the experience just because it was a little bit too lenient. What I like about Tiberian Sun is that story-wise, it leads well into the next game, Tiberian Wars. Not all game franchises work out their storylines so well, and feel like they're just making it up as they go along. And while some may be a little bit tired of Kane always springing back to life, not myself, as personally I think a bit of continuity is good in a game series, at least the story overall feels like it's been planned and not, as I said, made up as they went along. In this game, GDI's campaign certainly has more meaning than Nod's, I feel, which is a bit of a keep the player busy until Kane's big surprise in the final mission. If you didn't play Tiberian Sun before you played Tiberian Wars and are interested in the backstory, then rest assured it plays virtually the same as Tiberian Wars was, with much less sparkly graphics. If you can get over the graphics, then you'll be absolutely fine. In conclusion, this game does look and feel a little bit dated now. It's not quite the glittering RTS I enjoyed back in the day, but it's something that's fairly solid. There's something fairly solid about not only this game, but the series. I would never, give it, 8s or 9s, but I'd never give it any less than a 7 either, because they always have this kind of benchmark sort of status. They always have a fairly solid standard, I'd say, have the Westwood games. So, the story works, the cutscenes are nicely done, they're not overly serious, you can kind of have a laugh at them. The music, the graphics and the sound effects all work. None of them are jaw-dropping, but they do the job. The campaign doesn't wow you, but instead offers you a steady and reliable pace and standard which doesn't drop along the journey. Some games kind of pick up and then, go flat. This game is pretty solid. The factions are well balanced and have some of the best units in an RTS I've seen to date. Furthermore, the skirmish, while menacingly hard, has a host of options, maps, and tweakable features to improve longevity. While today it's unlikely to blow people away, it still plays reasonably well and has a very good expansion to boot. I give Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun a 7.6 out of 10. And that's me.